All right, starting up here. Let me pull up everything I need to pull up. And here we go. All right. Hello, everybody. What is up? I am Kenton Reynolds, and I am here to talk about bringing your characters into Unreal Engine 4. And, we're looking to have some fun tonight. It's going to be awesome, and I can't wait to get started. So first off, when I watch tutorials, I always like to go and see exactly what we're going to be doing and what we're going to be making so that I show that first. So I'm just going to pull this up really quick. And this is kind of what I'll be making today. So basically you'll have this character and you'll be able to move him around. And you can jump, all with the animations intact. You can see that the cloth is flowing, his headband's moving, his waistband's moving, and he's also blinking. So morph targets are in fact working. And you'll be able to attach objects to your character so that it looks like it's following him, like the basket there. And it's definitely not as hard as you think it is, and that's why I am here to show you. So yeah, let's go and get started. So let me see here. All right, so first off, we're just going to start, and I have actually Neil opened up in Max here. So this is Neil. He is the apple catching ninja. And right now I have his test animation file open. And again, this is 3ds Max, 3D Studio Max. And right here I have his base mesh, all of his mesh parts over here. So all of his geometry set up over here. And then I have his actual skeleton bone structure set up in this layer. So I'm hiding and unhiding. If I hide the mesh, this is his skeleton right here. I'm using the cat rigs. So he is rigged with the CAT in Max. And he's got, the headband, separate object, waistband, separate object. And that's an important thing to know. So if we play the animation here, you'll be able to see he's doing that this funky little test animation here. So his eyes are moving, you see, his arms are moving. This is something that we do just to make sure that the rig works and everything is in order before we do anything, before we import or export anywhere. And it looks like everything is in fact in order. So at the very beginning of this, I'm just going to show you how to export from Max. And I'm using Max again, but I know some of you guys are familiar with Maya, but they're both Autodesk softwares, so their exporting and importing mechanics should pretty much be the same, more or less. So I'm going to make sure that I unhide my rig, and I'm going to select everything. And then I'm going to go up to File, Export, Export Selected. And it's going to ask me where I want to export, and I'm going to locate where I'm going to export this. So I'm going to go into this mega folder, Characters in Unreal Demo, and I'm going to make a new folder. I am going to call it, animations. Sure, why not? And let's see here, I'm going to call this one Neil _ test. All right, and hit save. And then it brings up this little window here. So this is very, very important. What I like to do is I like to check smoothing groups because each polygon will have an option where you can put it on a certain smoothing group. I set that up already. I'm not going to go into how to do that, but if you have smoothing groups, make sure that's checked. I also have this box checked, dummies to bones, because some of the rig isn't actually bones, they're just like dummy objects or helper objects. And then preserve edge orientation, have that checked as well. Animation, you definitely want to make sure that you have animation checked out. And then you also want to go down to bake animation. And as you see down here, we have about 100 frames of animation. You don't see all of the actual keyframes here, but there are 100 frames of full animation there. I'm checking that box. I'm also going to check bake animation, and the animation starts at 0 and it ends at 100. And I'm also going to check resample all. And I think those are the main ones. I always like to double check this FBX file format and make sure that it says binary and 2014-2015. Now there are newer ones, but this seems to work arguably the best in my experience. Sometimes when I've switched to newer versions, it kind of messes up or something wrong happens. So I just keep it there. And I'm going to hit OK. And it may take a second, and then you'll see all these warnings and errors pop up. And honestly, these don't matter because it still works. It's weird. It's just yelling at you, but in reality, you should be okay, usually. So I'm going to hit OK. And that is now exported. So let's just hop over here into Unreal. And this is the Epic Games Launcher down here, where you can actually open up the engine. And of course, you start up with, on the home screen here, if it will let me switch. So this is what you see when you first open it up. But then if you go down to Unreal Engine, you'll be able to see all of your versions that you have downloaded. And we're going to use, which one should we use? We'll use 421. I'm going to hit launch. It's going to take a second. But this is a very important part of it, because a window is going to pop up and it's going to ask you what files you want to set up, what presets do you want to start with. And because we're just setting up a character in Unreal, it's nice because it has everything set up, and all you really have to do is go in, take your character, and replace your character with the one that's already in there. It makes everything so much easier. So these are past projects, and you see this is the actual project I used Neil in, Apple Time right here. But we're going to go and hit New Project. And we have all of these presets we can use. Me personally, for the Apple Time project, I use the side scroller one here. But for what we're going to do today is we're going to use the third person one, where you can like run around and move your camera around your character and everything. It's really nice. So we're going to say third person. We do not want any starter content because that's just going to add a whole bunch of extra gigs of I don't know, boxes, textures, and stuff. You don't want any of that. We're just making this really simple, just the character. And everything else should be okay. And then it's going to ask, where do you want to put it and what do you want to name it? So we'll call this one Neil in Unreal. How about that for a name? All right. And then we're going to go and save it out, not into my college files, nope, but into Mega. And we'll make an Unreal folder. Unreal. And we'll save it in here. And that's going to make a folder called Neil in Unreal. And in that, it will have all of your Unreal files there. So I'm going to say create project. Let it do its thing for a second. And bada bing, bada boom, you have an Unreal file open. So this is Unreal Engine 4 editor. This is all the Unreal games that you see made in Unreal and stuff. This is kind of like the hub of where they go to make these games. So I'm moving around the scene here. And right now you can see that there's a mannequin standing there. The camera's over here. You got some platforms. And if I hit play right now, you'll be able to see that I'm moving around. I'm just using the keys and the WASD keys and the mouse to move around and look. You can press the space bar to jump, but yeah, this is your typical default scene for the third person setup. But this isn't our character, and that's what we're going to change today. So I'm going to hit the escape key, and I'm going to look down into our content browser here. So it throws us into this third-person folder in our content browser. I'm going to expand this so we can kind of see the hierarchy here. And I'm going to actually go into our actual full content folder where you can see like every single thing. And from here, you can pretty much get to anything you want inside of your project. So out here, I'm actually going to make an entirely new folder and name it Neil. So that's our character folder. We're going to put pretty much everything we do inside this folder here. So we now have a blank folder inside, and the first thing we're going to do is we will import our animation. So I'm going to go back out into the demo, and we put it in the animations folder, and it's called Neil Test. That's exactly what we want. I'm going to take this and drag it out, and it brings up this window. Now this is also another very important window that you want to keep in mind, and this will continuously show up whenever you import into Unreal. So we have a mesh drop-down, animation drop-down, transform, miscellaneous, material, and all of this is very, very important. So in the mesh we have skeletal and import mesh. When you import, it will automatically create a skeletal mesh because what you're importing has a bone structure to it. So you could tell it not to import the mesh, but we obviously want to import the mesh. And we don't have a skeleton for Neil yet, but when you first import, it will show up. And for the animation, it's asking, do you want to use the exported time of the animation from max, which was 100 frames, right? So in this case, we would, but you can change it. So animated time, actually it's animated time, sorry. Animated time is the amount of frames that is actually animated. Unreal can actually track your bone structure and say, hey, this bone isn't, none of the bones are animating on this frame, so don't import those animations. That's animated time. And then you can set a range for your animation right here in Unreal. So maybe you exported 100 frames from Max or Maya, but you only want to import 30 of them. You can say start at frame 0 and I want to go all the way up to frame 30. But we want to set the entire animation, so we're just going to say exported time. And let's see here, there are a lot more options. I'm going to use the drop down real quick under the mesh and double check something. So since I have morph targets on my mesh, I'm going to check that. And I'll explain morph targets later if you guys want me to and if we have time. But morph targets, which does the facial animation, I have that, so I'm going to import that, check that box. Compute normals is good. MIKKT space, normal generation is good. Really nothing else really needs to change. I'm not going to go all into the details of this here. But sometimes the import translation and rotation is important because every 3D software kind of exports a little differently. But with Max, I find that if you set everything correctly, you really don't have to mess with this too much. And really the only last thing I'm going to do and change is this materials thing here. So I'm going to uncheck import materials and import textures because it will automatically pull the material from your export. So like you put a material on your object in Max or Maya, it will import that for you, but you'll still have to add a few things. But I want to show you how to actually make a material from the ground up in Unreal if you guys don't know. And I'll do that pretty quickly. But yeah, I think that's everything. So I'm going to say import. Give it some time to think. And then it's going to say, hey, we did not find a bind to pose it with. And it's like, well, we just imported one, so there's that. So we'll just use this. So we have 3 things that just imported. We have a skeletal mesh, we have an animation, and then we have a physical asset and an actual skeleton. So first I'm going to open up the skeletal mesh. And it looks very, very weird. It really depends on what you have as your base material, as to what material it will assign. I don't know what this is, but whatever it is, it's on there, and it's the default for this. You can change that later, obviously. But this is what we've got right here. And then over in the top right, you can switch between the different sets. So we have the skeleton, where we can look at the skeleton. Here is that hierarchy that we imported from Max. It keeps your name and it keeps the names of the bones and everything, which is really nice. And then over here is the animation that we exported, and you can see everything is working just fine. It even has a nice little graph down here where you can see all of your morph targets, and you can change this if you want to right in Unreal, which is really nice. And then this physics asset, and I'll explain that a little bit later. So right now, let's make the material for Neil, because I really do not like what's happening right here. So we're going to go and change that. Let's see. So if I pull this, I'm just gonna X right out of that. And I'm still in the Neil folder, right? So to make a new material, I'm gonna right click inside the browser and hit material. And that throws this material here. I'm gonna start this with M for material underscore Neil main and hit enter. So that makes this new material here. I'm going to double click it to open, and I'll throw it up inside of this window here. And this is what you see when you open up the material editor. And you have everything you really need to do any material you want. Changing these makes the actual ball kind of change. It will take a second to preview, but each one of these kind of has a different effect. We're not doing any translucent stuff, additive modules, so I'm not going to go into all this right now. But all we really need to do is take the textures that we exported from a software like Substance or 3D Coat and bring it in, or even Photoshop. And to do that, we actually have to export it and import it actually into this content browser here. So I'm going to locate those textures where I have them right here. Textures, and we're going to import these 3 textures. I'm going to click and drag them in, and here we are. If I double click on these textures, it will open it up and you will be able to see all the properties of them. We're not really going to change anything in here, but it's nice to know that you can double click on them, look at them, and kind of see everything that you have here. This is an unwrapped image of Neil. So if you unfolded the 3D model, you'll be able to see kind of how you can paint on to the mesh without actually having to go and paint on it. So we have our 3 different textures here. I'm going to open up our material, and I'm going to take these 3 textures and slap them in here. Click and drag them, and now we have them up in here. So I'll quickly explain what these 3 textures are. This one right here is the base texture, which helps with the color. This is like the main color, what Neil's base colors are. So his band's red, his face is a little on the light side, and his clothes are gray and dark gray. So I'm going to take this and plug it into the base color. And I'll explain this one. This one's a little easier. This one's called a normal map. And with this normal map, it will basically fake rivets and bumps all over the model. So we don't actually have them modeled inside of Neil, but this texture can make light bounce off of him in certain ways to make him look more detailed. So we're going to take this and plug it into the normal, because that's a normal map. And this map is called a ROM map, or a roughness, occlusion, and metalness map. And what that is, it reads all of these different, well, I say all, it's more like these 3 channels, the red channel, the green channel, and the blue channel. And it basically lays it on top, and it lays it out in a channel for you to basically see what each one does. You got to take the red one, put it in ambient occlusion, take the green one, put it in roughness, and take the blue one and put it in metallic. All of these I exported straight out of a program called Substance Painter. Shout out to Patrick Metzler and Aaron Villarreal for the talk that they gave last week on Substance Designer. Substance is an awesome program, and I think all of you guys should check it out. What groundbreaking softwares, definitely industry standard. So what that did is we are looking at this now. and we can look at this ball here, and you'll be able to see kind of how the light will play on your object in Unreal. And I'm going to press and hold the L button and click in this preview, and you can move the light around. And you can kind of see how it's reflecting off of everything. So instead of looking at a ball, I kind of want to look at Neil, right? So I'm going to click on the static mesh, and then I'm going to click on this little teapot thing. And what that will do is you can now see Neil previewed as the object instead of the sphere. And it may take a second to load, but it should show kind of the base of what you'll see. And of course you haven't applied it yet, but this is like a preview. So far that's looking correct. I don't see anything off, reflecting correctly, and I think that's good. So we're going to say that's a go, and I'm going to go back and double click on here, and in the material slots we're going to go to his element 0, which is his main body. You can highlight different parts of him, different meshes that you export. So we're going to select element 0, and we're going to go down to main, and you see that we have this material here that we just made, Neil main. I'm going to click that and give it a second, and it takes a while to think. You know, Unreal's a little slow here, but you know, give it a second, wait it out. That's not the right one. So what we have to do is, because Unreal is a little slow and you have to make sure that you apply everything, there's an actual apply button here. So after you do anything in the material editor, you actually have to hit apply for it to actually work. And a lot of people miss that, just like I just did. So we're going to go and hit apply. And again, I'm going to wait a second. 2 seconds. 10 seconds. Okay, there we go. And then we're going to go back into the mesh, and it should show correctly about now. Now it'll show. There we go. So, and it just auto-saved there. So that's also looking right. That's good. Again, no errors here. Reflecting well. That works. Cool. So now, since the headbands are also on that same map, we can just go down to element 2, which are the headbands, and we're going to apply that same material. So we're going to go Neil main, and boom, there they are. And that's also looking correct. And now we just got to do the eyes, because I made them separate objects. So I'm going to actually import those materials real quick, or I guess it's just one. Drag that in there. And I'm going to make a new material and call it m_eyes. Double click it to open. And I'm going to, because I only have one screen, it's nice when you have multiple screens, you just throw this off to the side and, you know, go to the other screen and grab what you need. But we only got one, we'll make it work. So here it is. This is the base color, so I'm going to put it into the base color node here. Give it a second, and boom! Look at that wide eye right there. So it's a little scary. I don't know if I want to look at it, so I'm going to turn it that way for a second. Since I don't have a roughness, metalness, occlusion map or a normal map for this, because I don't really think you need one, at least with this character. What I'm going to do is I'm going to directly input a number into the spec and roughness nodes here. So what I'm going to do is press and hold on the 1 button and left click, and that will add a singular expression. And this I'm going to plug into spec, and I can change the number here. I got to make sure I click on that. And I can change the number of this right here. So what specular does is it changes how the light reflects, how powerful the light reflects off your object. I'm going to change that to 1. We'll do 1. Not 21, silly. I said 1. Give it a second. All right, and then I'm going to copy that. Control C and Control V. and put that into roughness, and I'm going to change that to 0 because eyes are not rough. They're very, very, very smooth. And you see it kind of reflects a little bit, and you kind of get a little bit of that environment in the background. But that looks more kind of like a cartoonish eye. And since you won't be, looking at it from up close, I'd say that's all right for now. So again, make sure you hit apply or it won't work. Going back out and double clicking on the skeletal mesh once more. And because these are the eyes here, I'm going to go down and whoop, there it is, eyes. And it's compiling the shaders, which means that it's thinking. But essentially it will work and he will have his eyes show. Maybe. It always takes it a second to think. Wonder what it's thinking about. So there we go. You now have the materials of your character on your character in Unreal, which is great. And you can see all of that working in here once it compiles again, because it's got to think after everything. But you can see his eyes are working, so that's good. But that will load and it will show. So you got your animation, got the materials, and now it's a pretty good time to talk about collisions and how collisions work in Unreal for characters. So anytime you import a character into Unreal, it makes these things at the top, right? It makes a skeleton, a mesh, an animation if you have an animation, and then it makes this physics asset, which I kind of showed a little earlier but didn't talk about it. What this is basically telling Unreal what parts of the character are kind of, hittable. So all of these capsules are basically collision boxes, and they're attached to bones. So anytime your character moves, these capsules will move with it depending on the bone it's attached to. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to make sure that these are fitted to your character, and making sure that each of these capsules are kind of following the flow of the character itself. So if there's one thing that is a little annoying is doing this. This is probably one of the more time-consuming parts of this, but if you do this right, you will be very, very happy. So I'm going to do an okay job at this right now. I don't want to spend way too much time on it, but you'll essentially get the gist of it. So I'm going to take this here, pull this in, So this is the pelvis, and when I did this at home, just testing for this, I was like, "What is that? Is that like going to the waistband, or like what is that?" And then you got to look over here, down in this graph, to actually see what it's hooked to, and this says it's hooked to the pelvis. So I'm like, why is the pelvis capsule way over here? So that's a little wonky. So you basically will just have to move that in if your capsules are off. Move it into wherever it tells you to move it, and fix it up. Make it make sense, because obviously that didn't make sense. Again, you just kind of have to eyeball it a little bit. I think this is rotated a little bit off. So up here you have your different tools that you can use. I'm using hotkeys to do all of this. So when I press W, it brings up the move, E, it brings up rotate, and R, it brings up scale. But that's all up here, move, rotate, scale. And then you can change it from local movement to world movement. It's not working for scale, but for the move tool, if you have that selected, you can change that based on the actual rotation of your capsule, which is nice. So I'm actually going to use that for these rotating, for rotating them, so that it kind of stays rotated with the capsule. And we're going to shrink this down a bit. You can be like super tedious with it, but I'm just kind of throwing it together. And again, this is very important for cloth collision. So you'll see in a second when we do cloth collisions that this is what really matters, getting this right. So this huge one is for the head. I don't think his head's that big, so we're definitely going to shrink this down. Pull this together, pull it forward, shrink it a little bit more. Okay, that's okay. I think that one's rotated more than it should be. The ones on the back and the spine, I want to make sure I get kind of right, because these bands are going to fall down onto his back. So if I have these in a good position, it will look correct. Or else, you know, it'll look like they're phasing through him, and that doesn't look right. So we're gonna push that down. You can push this down a little bit. And then we have the hands. I'll rotate that just a little bit. Rotate this just a little bit. A little bit this way, a little bit this way. And, you know, I'd say that's okay for now. For now, we'll see how it works out. So because we have an animation in there right now, you can actually see the animation within your physics asset window, which is nice. You just got to go up to here, preview animation, and click the animation that you have imported. So we can kind of see how these capsules are moving with your bones. And it looks pretty cool. It's pretty okay. And you can pause the animation, you can scrub through and kind of see, you know, up close. It's like, okay, so the capsule is bending here, and then you can change it, rotate it a little bit, however you want. But I think for now, this is pretty okay. Whoops. So I accidentally did that, so I'm going to press Control-Z to undo that. And gotta compile again. It's got to think a lot. Unreal's got to think. Whoops. I'll close that too. All right, so we have set up kind of collisions and physics assets that we need for cloth. And I think actually that's what we're going to do now, is set up cloth. I know a lot of you have been wondering and asking me about it, so I am here to tell you what to do. So let me just scroll here through my notes and make sure I am on track. And I think we're good. All right, so cloth. Yes, cloth. I know I had a lot of questions when I didn't know how to do this, so I just looked up a crap ton of videos and did a lot of testing, and I figured out a few cool things. So what you want to do is you first want to look at your model and figure out where you want cloth to simulate. So I made it pretty obvious with this character where I wanted it to. Usually if you want cloth to simulate, you want to make sure that those parts of the model are sticking out away from the model, so you can actually paint weight paint on them, on the parts that you want to flop down or fly or whatever, right? So he has his bands kind of flown off to the side for that reason. So whenever I'm ready to go and cloth paint, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to section selection. Try saying that 20 times fast. And I'm going to select the part of him that I want to make cloth, which is the headband here. Once I have that selected, I'm going to right-click and hit Create Clothing Data from Selection. And it's going to say what I want to name it. I think that's pretty good. I don't know. I guess we can change the name if we want to. So, you know what? I'll do that. I like to be tidy with my stuff. So we'll go Neil Bands. And then it's asking what collision file you want to read. And since we made that physics asset up at the right here, we're going to use that one, right? So that's good. We're going to hit Create. Now, nothing seems to change, but what you need to do is you need to actually go into the Activate Cloth Paint. And then it will bring up this clothing tab that you can throw off to the side wherever. I like docking it over here so that you got all of your settings kind of chilling over on the left. So to bring up your actual paint settings, you have to click on the clothing data, which we made, neobands, and it put a little number here just because Unreal also likes to be organized and numbers stuff for you, which is nice. So I'm going to click on that, and it makes the part that you selected pink. And that represents the strength of the cloth, the strength of the gravity, basically. Right now it's like 0, null, it's zilch. We haven't painted anything quite yet. But we're about to, and it's going to be a lot of fun. So, over on the left we have all of these different settings. We have what tool you can use. You can change this depending on what you're doing. I'm not going to go into all of this yet, or today rather. But the important things that we're going to use today is the paint value, the radius of the brush, and making sure that this is brush. And that's really all we're worrying about today. So it's brush, and we're going to set the paint value to, I don't know, something like 100,000. That's a good number, right? Basically, what this is, you basically want the parts of the cloth that you want to be, cloth, to be 100% cloth. I've tried this with this at 100, and when it simulates and you have wind, even some of the ends of that cloth still don't simulate right. And I was wondering why. That's because you have to have this paint value number blown up, basically out of proportion, if you want everything to simulate correctly. There are many cases where you might not want that, depending on the cloth you're making, but overall, for everything I use, I make sure that's pretty jacked up. So that's at 100,000, and the radius of the brush is at 128, and of course you can see what that looks like. That's not what we want. So we're going to turn that down to like 15 for now, and that's a lot more manageable. So all you really got to do is just go over the areas that you want to paint and click, and you're just painting along the areas that you want to simulate. So we'll do something like that. That's okay for now. And we'll go over here, something like that. That's okay for now. And again, I'm not being too picky with it. And since you're kind of getting really close and into all of this stuff, I'll probably end up changing the size of the brush in a second to make it more manageable. But we're painting, coming up, and I think I'm going to change the size now to like 2, like that. Zoom in here a bit. We'll paint a little on the side there. That's pretty close. I don't want to go too much further than that. If you mess up, you can always undo, Control Z it. The family-friendly undo. Everybody loves Control Z. Really nice. It fixes all your problems most of the time. Don't quote me on that. Whoops, I accidentally painted a little bit onto the knob, which we don't want. So I'm going to get that one last little thing. There we go. There we go. All right. So it's painted. Those are the parts, the white parts there are the parts that I want to simulate. So when that's done, you go and deactivate the cloth. Now you're like, well, what happened? It didn't fall. It didn't simulate. Well, that's because all you did there was just make this over here. What you want to do is now you got to apply it. So you want to select the bands again, right click, and now instead of create, you want to apply. And yes, you want to apply this one that we just made. It's going to think for a second, and boom, it falls down, and you now have cloth on your character. It's floating down, and you see here how it's kind of like colliding inside of the pants here. You may not be able to see it as well right now because it's still compiling the shaders. Still loading the materials and textures, but it is colliding just a little bit with the leg. And you can easily fix that by going back into the physics object and changing the size of these capsules. So let's make this a little bit bigger. And you see how it's also simulating with it? So if I click off, you're able to kind of see the result and how that fixed the problem. And that's pretty good. And what's it doing back here? So I'd say that's all right. Now, you can definitely change the settings of your cloth. You just got to go back into the asset details here. And then you want to make sure that you go into, where is it? Clothing. Drop down on clothing, drop down on clothing properties, and then drop down on cloth config. And here you can change the settings of your cloth. Man, this sidebar likes to be wonky. But here are all of your settings. And right now you probably aren't able to see a whole bunch happening or simulating. And that's because you actually don't have wind or anything on. Wouldn't it be cool if we had some wind? Well, you can do that. Go into character, clothing, and then you can set wind strength here. It's at 0 right now, but it's always blowing, so we'll set it to 2. And now you can see there's wind blowing, and you can kind of see it simulating in real time, live, right there for you. And you can change these settings here. I played a little bit with this, but this is pretty much what I was looking for, so I didn't really go deep into it. But just know that you have all these settings to play with, so whenever you do this, just go and have a ball changing all of this. But like tether stiffness, like 50, you don't really see much happening there, but I kind of like this one. Changing the tether limit, you can see I was like stretching a lot more. We'll do 100. It's like, ooh, it's getting a little crazy. 1000, and then we'll change this back to 1. You could do some pretty cool stuff. But we'll keep everything at 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 for now. So yeah, there's your cloth, and it's a lot more simple than most people think. So yeah, we got cloth, we have animation, we've got materials, and we just really need to go and hook Neil up now, pretty much. But we don't have all of his animations in quite yet, right? So we got to import all of those. And if we're going back, we have all of this stuff here, right? And I don't like all of that, so I'm going to organize this a bit. So I'm going to make an animations folder and throw animation in there. I'm going to say move here. I'm going to right click, make another new folder, call this one materials. I'm going to take these, throw that in there, move here, I'm going to right click, new folder, name this one mesh, not mesh, mesh. Click all of these, drag them in here, move here, right click again, textures, because textures and materials are different. Textures are the images you bring in, and materials are the actual materials that you make with the textures. So textures is in there, and now it's a lot more organized, and I feel better about my life. So now we just got to really import the rest of the animations, right? So I will pull up all the different animations that we got. So I'm going to go and open, nah, that's not safe. I'm going to go and search, let's see here, Mega Characters in Unreal Demo, Max, and let's load in our idle. And here we go. Standing here, if I play, this is his idle animation. Nice and chill. I'm going to unhide the bones, and then I'm going to select everything. File, export selected. And it took us to that animations photo that we made earlier. I'm going to say Neil_idle. Whoops. Idle. All the settings should be the same except your animations tab. It usually changes down here to the actual length of your timeline down here, which is really nice. You don't really have to change anything. It's 0 to 80. Our animation is 80, so we're going to keep that. And that everything else is the same. If that's all good, hit OK. It's going to throw up those same errors that, don't apply. So we're going to say OK. And so we did that. Now we're going to open up another one. We're going to go open. Don't save. and we'll open our jump. And here's the jump. Nice and simple. So going to click and drag everything. Export selected. Title this one Neil_jump. Hit OK. And our animation's 40, saying 0 to 40. Perfect. 14, 15, good. OK. All the errors. All right, let's open up another one. Don't save. We got run. Here's his running animation. Kind of fun. Okay. Going to select all. File. Export selected. Neil_run. 0 to 15. Exactly what we want. Okay. All the errors. And one last one. Don't save. Walk. This is his walk. Kind of chill. Going for a stroll. Hopefully don't get bombarded by apples. Select all. Export selected. Neil_walk. All the things are checked. 0 to 20. Perfect. 14, 15. Okay. All the errors. And I think that's it. I think that's all of them. And now we're going to go back into Unreal right here. And we're going to go into our animations folder. And we're going to throw all of our animations right in here. So we got idle. I'm pressing and holding control to select multiple. Jump, run, and walk. And I can click and drag and drop all of these in here. And it brings up that same window as before. And we got skeletal mesh, import mesh, all of that's checked. But we actually have a skeleton now, the Neil skeleton, Neil test skeleton. So we're going to select that as the skeleton for these animations to be parented with. We have morph targets on all of these. And we're going to go with the exported time of each animation. And I think everything else looks in order. We don't have to do any materials because we already have the materials set in Unreal. And I think everything is fine. So instead of just hitting import, we hit import all, and it applies these settings to all of the animations that we just dragged in. So I'm going to say import all. And bada bing, bada boom, it brings up this message again. And again, I'm not 100% sure of everything. I don't know exactly why it's saying this, but it doesn't matter. So we're just going to close it. And it imports all of these physical assets and the skeletal mesh along with the animations. We already have a skeletal mesh and a physics asset that we're using. So honestly, we can just delete these right now, as long as we're not deleting the ones that we're using. You got to be careful about that. So I'm going to delete these. And it's like, oh, are you sure you want to delete these? I'm going to say force delete. And then if you have like materials open, which we do, it's going to ask, it's like, hey, do you want to save all of these? Because we're also going to close these windows. So just be mindful and say, yeah, we'll apply all the changes to those materials right now. That's fine. So it's going to do a lot of thinking. Going to do it again. I'm going to hit yes. We had two materials open there. And some last second thinking, and now we should have all of our animations in there, which we do. We got idle, jump, run, the test animation we imported earlier, and the walk. If we double click on one of these, it will open up that animation, and we can look at it just like we were able to with the other one. And you see the cloth is simulating, even though nothing's really happening. We can go back and add that wind. So we'll go to clothing, Turn this up to back to 2. So it's now flowing, and this is that wind object. You can kind of see the way it's blowing there. And then you can actually change the animation in here. Just go, I think you can. Oh, you got to be in mesh. My bad. You got to be in the mesh here, and then you can change the animations that you see. So we just saw the idle, which is this one here. Again, I'm gonna go back, clothing, clothing, 2, the wind, and then we can change it. So we see that animation. Now let's see that jump animation. Here's that jump. Let's see that run. Here's that run. Let's see the walk. And there's the walk. And everything seems to be looking a-okay. Morph targets are working, which is nice. Boss simulation's working, which is also nice. Physics assets still there, good. And all the animations are imported. Beautiful. And it's about this point where actually I should have been doing this, but ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we need to save. Yes, and I mean save. So we need to go all the way up to File and hit Save All, so it saves everything that isn't saved in your file. So everything that you edited before is now saved, and you won't have to worry about it bringing up any windows. It's like, do you want to save this? It's like, it's already saved. So now we have everything we need to set up Neil so that you can control him in engine. All right. So a lot of you guys, you know, are more, I know a lot of you guys are like artists and not necessarily, you know, programmers. I'm not a programmer myself, but Unreal makes it so easy to just take your characters and set it up because they already have this character right here ready for you to use. So we're going to be a little bad and steal this dude's code and plop it right onto Neil. Why? Because we can. All right. I don't know if any Unreal devs are watching this or not, but don't sue me. I'm sorry. I'm just an animator. I'm a student. I'm just trying to make it too. All right. So so what we're gonna do is we're gonna find the files for this guy, duplicate them, and put them in our Neil folder. So I'm gonna back out to our content. I'm gonna go into third person because that's where he is. I know some of his blueprints are. And we're going to go into blueprints, and this is his character blueprint. All right, so this is what makes him work. So we are going to right click and duplicate, and we'll name this Neil, actually backspace that. We'll do BP for blueprint underscore Neil. All right, and then I'm going to take this and drag this out under the Neil folder and say move here. So we're not changing this at all. We're keeping this intact. We're just duplicating it and moving it into our Neil folder. And now we're going to go back out to content, and we're going to go into the mannequin folder. And we see these are all the mannequin's animations here. And then you see a couple other things here. This is an animation blueprint, which tells the mannequin what animations to play when you press certain buttons. We'll go back into that in just a second, but then we got this blend object, which tells the mannequin when to walk and when to run and when to idle, based on the pressure that you put on a game controller joystick. So I have a game controller up here, and I'm using this to control the characters. So you know how in some video games where you like slowly move the joystick or whatever a little bit, and the character like walks, and then the more you push forward on that joystick, it will like go from walk to run or something like that. That's what Unreal does, and it does it automatically for you, and it's really nice. So we're going to show you how to set that up in just a second, but we're not going to actually duplicate these because I found that doing that doesn't work. So what you actually have to do instead is go back into your mesh, and you have to make it from here. So you have to right click on your skeletal mesh. You got to go up to create, and then we are going to make an animation blueprint. So I'm going to call this one animBP underscore Neil. Enter. And you see it makes it straight from the mesh. You see the little icon of Neil in here, which is awesome. And then we're also going to do that blend shape. So we're going to right click, create, and then blend space 1D. We're going to name this one blend underscore, let's see, idle, whoops, I can't spell today, idle, idle run, we'll do this, idle run. Really all you need. Goes from idle to run. So that's made, and now it's the parts that a lot of people dread but really shouldn't, which is the actual plugging up and hooking up, right? So we're going to take these and actually put them in the animation folder, because that's technically where they belong. So we did that, and let's open this up really quick. So when you first open this up, it's going to take you to basically the graph of Unreal. So we are in the anim graph right now. And this is the final animation pose. So whatever you hook up to this will show up over here as far as animation goes. We have nothing here yet because you didn't make anything here. And same thing with the event graph. I just double clicked on the event graph. There's nothing here yet. But this is what makes it like go. So you hook up the actual animations in the anim graph, and then you use the event graph to say play, basically. When the game starts, do this. There's nothing in here yet because we didn't put anything in here. But this is where we get a little naughty, and we go back out. And we go back out into the content folder, mannequin, animations, and we open up the mannequins blueprint. Now let's see what's in here. So this is the mannequins animation graph. And you see that there's a whole state machine attached to this final animation pose. A state machine is what is used to actually go from animation to animation, right? So if we double click on the state machine, you'll see that there is quite a few nodes and things happening here. So what this is saying is when the game starts, or basically when, I'm going to go on the event graph here, when the game starts and when this happens, it's going to go into the character's idle/run animation, which is that blend that we made earlier. And then it's going to say, if your character is in the air, basically if you press the A button or if you jump, it's going to go to the very first part of the jump animation. So the thing about this is the jump animation that we imported should be broken up into 3 separate animations. Right now, if I click this, you'll be able to see, I'm going to double click on the mannequin's jump animation. So this is the very beginning of the mannequin's jump animation, where he's lifting off of the ground, right? And now I'm going to go back, and this is kind of the loop that plays. Double click. So this is the loop that plays while the animation is in the air. So if your mannequin is in the air for a long period of time, it will continuously loop this animation. It kind of looks a little weird. It looks like he's like hitching or something. I don't even know. It's a little weird for me. But back out once more and go to jump end. Double click. And this is him landing. So you kind of have to have your jump animation broken up into separate parts in order for it to look right in Engine. So, whoops. What we're going to start with now is we're going to back up and we're going to go back into the event graph, and we're going to do this. We're going to select all of this. I'm going to hit Control-C for copy, right? And then I'm going to delete this, zoom out, Control-V. Blam. That's set up. We don't got to do nothing. Amazing. All right. So that's set. We don't have to touch this again. Now we can also go back. Check this out. Anim graph. Boom. Control-C. Anim graph. Boom. Control-V. And then hook it up. And then wablamo. We have all this set up for us. Again, we don't really have to put all that in there. But what we do have to do is we have to replace the mannequin's animation with Neil's animation, which isn't too difficult because we already have that set up. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into this idle/run. We're going to look at it, right? So we got this third person, which is the mannequins. We don't want that one. We want the one that we made. So we're going to go into our asset browser, which has all of our animations for Neil inside of it. And we're going to go and drag in this blend idle run. We're going to plug the speed up into this node that says none, and then we're going to plug this up to that pose. And then we can get rid of this because we're not using it. Now, nothing's happening right now because we didn't actually do anything inside of this blend idle run thing. So let's do that real quick. So let's back out to content, go back into Neil, animations, and let's open up our blend idle run. So this is what that looks like. And again, what this blend does, it's basically a blueprint that reads from one animation to another animation, and it will slowly translate between them based on how much you move a certain part or a certain control. And we're mapping it to the movement control on our game controller, which is, the left stick. So it's gonna autosave for us, which is nice, that autosave function. But over here we have that same asset browser that we had back in the animation blueprint, and all we really have to do is click and drag animations right out onto here. So let's see here. We want idle, so basically just standing still. We want that to be when the character isn't moving. So when the movement speed is at 0, when you're not moving, you're idling, you're standing there. All right. And then we'll say you got walk and run, right? So we'll say when your character is at half speed, he's at a walking pace. So I just clicked and dragged that out to the center and let go. And then we'll say if your character is fully running, we'll drag that out to the very end at 100. Now you see nothing's happening yet, but if you see this little green dot, this is kind of a little node that you can move, and it will show you what's happening. So at 0, you're just standing, but you're slowly moving up, and you start walking a little bit, and now you're at full walk. And then if you push it even further, it translates between walking and running effortlessly. Whoops, I keep doing that. But this is what I love about Unreal, because Unreal is smart. It thinks a lot. It's smart. I had different frames for the walk and run kind of, but it's able to easily translate between everything as if, they were all from one same animation. It's crazy. I love it. It's the best. And again, that didn't take a lot of effort at all. So we have that. Now, to make it actually work right with the controls that we have in our character blueprint, we have to change a couple settings over here. So over here you see the blend samples, which is all the animations that we just dragged in. We have Neil idle, Neil walk, and Neil run, which we dragged in. So you can change, at 0 it plays this, yeah, we want to keep that. At 50 it plays that, yeah, and at 100 it plays that. But we want to make sure that this is mapped to the same controls as the mannequin was, right? So we want to kind of reference what the mannequin's numbers were, just to make sure that everything works correctly. So I'm going to go back into the mannequin's blend and see what they got going on. So this is his, and his is a little different. For him, it starts at 0 and it ends at 375. And what I find is 375 is basically the top speed that you can go that makes sense for this mannequin's animation, right? Because every animation you do for every character, maybe their run speed is different, maybe they're a bigger character and don't run as fast, so their legs aren't moving as fast. So you may want to change this number based on the size of your character or what the character's personality is or how their run animation is, right? But for this character, it's 375. And so I'm just going to copy this just for simplicity's sake. So I'm going to go back into our blend animation, and I'm going to change this one to 375 as well. 375. Oh, 375. Ah, yes. So it doesn't work, right? Which means that we have to go back up and change the axis settings. We got to do the drop down, and here is actually what you need to do before you do any of that. So these are like the general settings of this. So you got to give this little green dot a name, right? And if you remember back in the animation blueprint that we had, we plugged in a speed node, right? And it was titled speed. So technically this blue dot or green dot. I can't see color today either. This green dot is the speed of your character. So we're going to title this speed, S-P-E-E-D, right? And now this is saying what minimum value and maximum value you want to have, right? What do you want to cap it at? You want to cap it at 375, right? So let's say 375. And this tells you how many sections your grid is divided up into. Right now we have 4. We can change this if we really wanted to. We change it to 6. Now we have like 6 different things, so we can have like a couple different ones. Like maybe you go from like, you know, idle and you're in the middle of a jump. So I don't know, it does some weird stuff. You could get crazy with this, right? You could do some wonky things. But we're just gonna go from idle to walk to run. So we're gonna change this back down to 4. And interpolation time, I'm actually not 100% sure what this does, so I'm not going to change it. But as you see, this is 375 now, and this number is smack dab in the center, which is what I want. Because after playtesting, I found that whatever this speed is right here is pretty quick for Neil to translate to. So I basically found myself going instantly into run every time I started moving. So I just basically moved that back up, so that I'd be walking when I'm at halfway with my stick. It made more sense to me. That's what I'm going to do. So that's pretty much how you set that up. So I'm going to save, since that's done. And I'm going to hop back into my Neil animation blueprint. And you see that node is now named speed rather than like none. I think it was named none when we started. But now it's named speed. So I'm going to save. And if I compile, it's probably going to throw up a few errors right away, which are errors that we'll fix later. So don't mind them right now. We're just going out and switching out these animations for now. We'll worry about those later. I don't. Okay. So, so we're going to go into the jump start, and as you see, it's going to give us an error because this is the mannequin's jump start, which is not what we're using. We're using Neil's, but we actually didn't break up our jump animation into anything quite yet. So what's really nice is we can actually go into that jump animation that we have. I'm going to go into Neil animations jump, and basically, you know, this is the full jump. So we're looking at like the jump. You know, it starts. So probably from like frame 0 to frame, I don't know, what, 15 or something is like the start. We'll do that for now. So got to keep that in mind. I'm going to duplicate this jump animation. Duplicate, so we'll title this Neil _ jump start. Now double click on that. Now nothing changed, but we can easily go back into the import settings and we can change from exported time to set range. Now we can go into the drop down and change it from 0 to whatever frame we think is the end of that start, which I think was, I said 15, I think, but I might change it to 20. 20 or 25. I think I did 25. We'll do 25. So 0 to 25. All right, that's the frames that I want for the jump start. And I'm going to go back and say re-import animation. It's going to think for a split second, and then it says successfully re-imported jump start from the regular jump FBX that we dropped in. So now it just has that jump start, you know, like we really want. And if we back out, you'll see that it didn't change the original jump animation that we had. It just deviated from it, which is an important part to note. So that's the start. We also had a loop from the jump, right? So we're going to duplicate that regular jump again. Duplicate. Neil _ jump loop. And that loop will probably be from what, 25 to 30 maybe? Yeah, something like that. So like do this or something. So we'll do that. We'll go from 25 to about 30. 5 frames, pretty good. And then I'll say re-import. Successfully re-imported jump loop from that jump file. Perfect. So now if I hit play on the loop, this is the loop, right? Oh no. Did I not do it? Jump loop. Do I have to re-import? Oh, yeah, see, so you have to make sure you set range, right? So I didn't have that. So again, just double check all of your settings before you do it, and then re-import. There we go. Successfully did it. All right, move aside, please. And there you go. So it's glitching a bit, right? Of course, you can animate it so that it makes more sense. But for now, we'll say that's fine for time's sake. I'm going to say save. Let it back out. And so we have the start, we have the loop, and then we'll go back into our jump and what we wanted from 30 to 40, right? So we'll duplicate this, name this Neil underscore jump end. That's the end. So we're going to double click this and we'll go 30 to 40. And then again, you want to make sure you set this to set range. And then re-import animation. And bada bing, bada boom, wham bam, thank you ma'am, play, lands, beautiful. That's the end. So we have all of those split, and we didn't have to click and drag or make separate animation files in Max or anything for that. You could just chop up one animation into multiple ones easily right in Unreal. Another beautiful thing about Unreal. So it's been a while. I'm going to file, save all. Beautiful. All right. And let's revisit that animation blueprint. So this says third person jump start. We don't want that jump start. We want this one right here, Neil jump start. Click and drag that out, plug that up. We are set there. Go over to jump loop. We don't want this jump loop. We want this jump loop. Click, drag that over here. We're all set. Back it out. And we don't want this jump end. No, we want this jump end. Oh, click and drag that out. Pull it up. There we go. We pretty much just set Neil up for success. All right, we pretty much did it. But again, if you hit compile, you will get the yellow. This is going to have to bring this up. All right. We'll play with you. All right. Look at all these errors. Look at all. So we'll go one by one. So first of all, it's talking about a variable that's called set is in air. If we go to the mannequin's blueprint, we have a couple variables in here. Now we can't copy and paste, but we can just create these variables easily, right? And the reason why we need to do this is because this blueprint is calling for variables is in air and speed, which we don't have currently set up in our variables in Neil. So we'll create a new variable, hit this button over here, and title this is, you have to name it exactly right, so capital ISINAIR question mark, I believe that's right. Hit enter, and we're also going to compile it so that we can see this checkbox over here. And I believe it is by default unchecked. Let's double check that. Select is in air. Yep, by default it is unchecked, so that's good. Now let's go and hit a new variable. Let's name this one SPEED for speed. Hit enter, and we have to change the value type or the variable type to a float. And the only reason why you would probably notice that is because, hey, this is green, just like the one that's in the other animation blueprint. And then it's going to say, whoa, are you sure you want to change the variable type? Yes, I'm sure I want to change that variable type. And it couldn't find any errors, which is great. So yeah, is in air and speed. And we also want to compile that once more so we can see the default speed, which is 0 now. And I think it's also 0 over here. Yep, it's also 0. So cool, we don't have to change any of those. And that's all we got to do for those. And you see those errors are kaput. They're gone. We fixed that problem. But it's still yelling at us. So what's up, man? So let's go through and see what this is. To quick jump to an error, you can just click one of these. And, whoops, it's bringing me over to this play Neil jump start. And what it's saying, so it's saying that this was not processed because of a transition getter. So basically what that means is it's not recognizing this because of what's happening here. All right. I think, no, I lied. It's not registering this because of what's happening here. And what's happening here is that it's trying to read the mannequin's, something from the mannequin again. What this is saying is it's trying to get the remaining animation frames of that last animation from here. And it's basically saying when this animation gets to like the last like 5 frames or something like that, start slowly transitioning to this animation here, right? But the reason why it's throwing the error is because it's trying to do it for the mannequin, but this isn't the mannequin. So we do have to do one little thing and put a code in here, all right? So we actually have to do a teensy tiny bit of actual coding. I'm sorry if you thought that this was code free, but we actually got to get into it just a bit. So I'm going to go here and we're going to type in ratio, right? Because this is looking for a time remaining ratio. And we're looking for the time remaining ratio of the very last animation that plays, which is the jump start animation. So we got to get the time remaining of the last animation, which is that, and then just slide that into the top frame here. And this is saying the last 10%. So when it gets to the last 10% of that animation, it will slowly transition into the next one. So if we hit compile, boom, that error is gone. Hey, okay, what do we got to do now? So we jump to this one. Okay, so we got to do the same thing. So get the last time remaining of, is that regular jump? I don't know. Let's go down here. Not that one. So it's probably this one. Yeah. So it's the end one, right? So let's go and get the ratio of jump end, time remaining of jump end. And we'll throw that in the top. Boom, drag up, compile. Oh my goodness. No errors. Guys, we in this. We in this. We in it. We're in it, guys. Okay. So, what we have just done is we have successfully created an animation blueprint for Neil that actually works. And a way to test this right now is, I think if we go here, yeah, so if you go into the animation preview editor, you can see your actual character kind of moving around a little bit. He's in that idle animation, right? Because we're not moving, we're not doing nothing. But you can test that by changing these variables right over here, the is_in_air variable and the speed. So let's move at 100 speed. Type in 100 and he's slowly walking. He's slowly creeping. All right, let's do 200. That's about his regular run cycle, right? And now let's do 375. Now he's running. That's the full, that's the max speed, right, that we set. So we can basically emulate kind of a controller left stick just by sliding this around, right? So now what about jump? Oh, well, that's simple. You just got to check this box and he's jumping. And then it's playing that loop that I said would probably look weird, and it kind of does. So, and then when you uncheck, it lands. But it's a little wonky, and I'll tell you why in a second. So it's a little choky. What you have to do when you set these in the animation graph is you want to make sure that everything that you are putting in there, because everything has like its own properties over here. The jump start animation, you don't have to loop that, right? Because he's not jump starting multiple times. And by default, the loop button is checked. So we're going to uncheck that, right? Your jump loop, you do want to loop. But because it looks really weird when you test it, at least for my character, because I didn't animate it right, because, you know, I'm still learning too. So I'm going to uncheck that. So basically, it's going to play those 5 frames of animation, and it's just going to stop on the last frame. So you won't be like doing any weird twitching or anything like that. But it'll look better, right? So we'll go back out, and then we'll go to jump end, where he also doesn't loop that. So we're going to uncheck that. So now, if we go back out, we don't have to go back to the event graph. I just like to do it. Let's compile. And now let's do our jump. He's jumping, he's in the air, and then he lands. Boom. So now we can actually simulate, he's running and then jumping. What then? So he's running 375, and then he jumps, right? And he lands and he's running again. But you see how there's like a little delay after he lands, right? That won't look right. So that's also another little tweak that we can do in the animation graph. I'm going to stop him from running right now. Just stand there, buddy. And we're going to go into jump end. And actually, not this one, but we're going to go into where it goes from jump end to idle/run, the transition between. So you see here where it says 0.1. So at the very last, little bit of that last animation, it will transition. That's too little. We want that to start basically when he lands, literally lands, and not transitions back to the idle pose. So what we're going to want to do is just bump this up to maybe when the animation gets to about halfway, it starts to transition into idle/run. So when he's halfway in that landing animation, it will transition into the idle/run blend. So we'll compile that, and we'll have him running once more, and we'll have him jumping, stays there, and then he lands, and he's back running. Without any problems, nice and smooth, nothing to worry about. And of course, you can change this depending on your character. Again, every character is different. So whatever you want to do, you can change that, and it will work just fine. So there's that. And with that, Neil's animations are set up for you. All you really have to do is make it so that you can play him as a character when you hit the play button in Unreal. So we're going to save it. We can actually just close out of this now since we're done. Don't need to see that anymore. We don't need to see this anymore. We don't need to see this anymore. Or this, or even this. But what we do need to see is Neil's actual blueprint. So this is a little scary when you first open it up, right? If you're not a programmer, you're like, what is this? I thought you said that was it. And I mean, technically, that is it. We are not touching any of this, all right? This is the preset. This is what comes with your character blueprint, all right? Just to make it move and work. This is why the presets in Unreal are really nice to work with if you're just getting a character, throwing it in there, swapping it out. What we do need to do is go into viewport and change a few things set up in here. So right now we have the mannequin just chilling, but we don't want the mannequin, we want Neil. So what we got to do is you got to select the mannequin, and you can change it right here. So you can change the skeletal mesh to whatever you want, the materials to whatever you want, and we got the actual animation blueprint selection right here. So first I'm going to change it to Neil. That's the only other skeletal mesh we got. Boom, there's Neil. And it also imported all of the materials that we had with them, which is beautiful. Now we just got to give it the animation blueprint that belongs to him, and snap, there he is. So we just swapped him out, and really I think that's pretty much all you got to do, at least at this point right here. He should be able to work, run, move, and everything. Now, you can, of course, change the settings on how this character moves, on how Neil moves or your character moves, by going to the character movement layer down here and changing any of these options. Now, this is there's just a whole bunch here that I'm not going to tackle, but just know that, if you want your character to, let's see, walking, you can make your character run faster. I think max walk speed right here, you can change it to whatever you want. I think I had mine at 900 when I was doing it. So he'll run or move faster because he's a ninja and his animation is more for speed. So if I had this any lower, it'll look like he's running in place super fast, but this will match the speed that he'll actually be at in engine. So, but you could change any of this, right? Jump, how high he jumps. So I'm going to type in jump actually and show you some things here. So this is the jump velocity. I think that's how high he jumps. And then you have, can he jump? That's a checkbox. And then there's actually some jump settings that you can get by hitting the layer BP Neil up here. And these are probably more important. So you know how in some games where you would jump you would press and hold the jump button and you would jump higher, right? That's all you have to do is just set that number here. So jump max hold time, we'll say if you hold the jump button like I don't know, 0.2, whatever unit that is. If you press and hold it for that time, he'll continuously elevate. And after that time hits, he'll start to fall, right? And jump max count, how many times can he jump in air? You can set this to a crazy number. You got unlimited jumps or something like that. It's only set to 1, but in the demo that I played earlier, I had it set to 2, right? So you can jump, you can double jump, basically. Again, which is nice. So those are just some of the couple settings you can change out of the many settings you can change. So I suggest, have fun with it, play around with it. But, again, it's whatever character you're working on, whatever they're like. So with that, that's really all you got to do for now inside of BP Neil's character blueprint. So you just got to compile it, save it out, and now you just got to tell Unreal to make that character kind of the character that you play instead of the mannequin here. So let me check back with my notes, double check one thing here. So yeah, okay, so what you got to do is there's an actual game mode blueprint that you have to go and change. So if you go in the world settings here, let's see, so you have this game mode section here, right? And it's set to none right now. You don't really have to change it, but let's actually navigate to where we have a game mode, which is in the third person blueprint and blueprint. So this is what was next to it. This is a game mode. So this is basically a blueprint that tells Unreal kind of the base. You can put anything in here, and changing these things will change how Unreal works for this project. You can set the base pawn actor or base character that you're using. You can set what HUD you want to play. So if you have like UI, you can set like a certain UI thing here if you make a new UI for your game. Player state class, what program the Unreal reads for the characters and everything. You can change all that here. Right now, in default pawn class, it's set to third person character, which is the mannequin. We're going to want to change this to Neil because we're controlling Neil, not him. And that's all you got to do here, which is awesome. So you got to compile and back out to here. And then just to make sure that we're set on that game mode, I don't think you have to do this, but I'm just going to go and change it to the third person game mode that we got here. And of course, you got your drop down, and you can, it tells you right there what you're using, and then you can change any of these right here in the world settings tab. So we have that changed. Now we're gonna, again, it's been a second, so I'm gonna say save all. And all you really got to do, let's take Neil real quick and throw him out. So when you drag him out, you can see, he's not as tall as Mannequin here, but he's still kind of scary looking, right? I mean, look at those mean eyes. Look at that stance. That's a very dominant stance. You don't want to mess with him. But let's see what happens if we hit play. Oh no, I'm controlling Mannequin. But I can see Neil standing there. Why can't I control him? Well, you got to delete your Mannequin out the scene, right? And then, boom. You're controlling Neil. You can run around and you still see Neil here. And that's only because you don't need to drag him out. And I thought you had to do that a while ago, but really what reads when you have a game mode here, it's this that your character spawns at. It's this network player start over here. And you want to make sure that this is set to a position or on a place where it's not like touching anything weird or like getting too close to something, or else it will say bad size and you won't be able to spawn from there. But in this case, it was just doing that because it was acting weird. But now you can run around. You have your character moving around in Engine. You hooked him up. You set the animations. He can jump. He can double jump. You press and hold the jump button, and he jumps higher. If I tap the jump button, it's not as high. I have my controller on, so I'm going to run around. I'm going to lightly push on my left stick, and he's like slowly moving. But if I push all the way, he's running, and he's running around, and there he is. Now, you'll see that, remember when we were using the animations and looking at them, in the actual editor, there was wind blowing, right? You can actually drop that in. So we'll go over here to where it says search, the search bar over here, and we'll type in wind. And we got wind directional source. That's what we want. We're going to click and drag that out. It's going to drop that wind icon that you saw earlier in the editor in your scene. You can put this anywhere because wind is just universally everywhere, just like a sun or whatever. Like directional sun will just slam light in one direction, right? This just slams wind in one direction. And you can change the direction of the wind by just rotating the object around your scene. And then you can change the way or how strong the wind is if you go to details. And we'll say strength 2 and speed 2. Hit enter. And now if I hit play, you'll see wind is now working. And you can see Neil, he's running, and the wind's applying. And you have your character in Unreal. So now there are a couple other things that I also wanted to go over, so for just certain special cases. So let's say Neil has a basket, right, that he runs around with because he's the apple catching ninja, right? So maybe your character has a sword or something like that, like some kind of weapon that he carries. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to import that object, whatever it is. In my case, it's the basket. So I'm going to take this and import it. So click and drag basket in. And it's an FBX. There is no animation in here. So we don't really have to do anything for animation. And it's not a skeletal mesh because it has no bones. It's just a basket. And I don't think anything needs to change. Sometimes it imports depending on what 3D software you exported it out from. Sometimes the axes are off and you'll have to change the rotation or translation. I don't think I have to. We'll see in a second. But I'm just going to hit import. And you can double click it. And well, because it's a static mesh, you see this line is blue. And it's not a skeletal mesh. When you double click it, everything looks a little different. And the window is also, a little different. You've got your, settings over here. You can change collision for it. You can set collision for these objects down here where it says collision. You could say you want simple collision, and to look at your actual collision box, you can check what simple collision looks like, and it's that green box there. So, I guess this would work for some cases, but if we want the apple to actually look like they're falling in the basket, we're going to want something that looks more like complex collision, which is that blue, shape there, which actually outlines your mesh. A lot of people have, trouble trying to figure out where this option is. So you want to make sure that you come down here and say use complex collision as the simple collision. Kind of like a play on words. You're kind of tricking Unreal. It's like, hey, use this one instead of the simple one because it works better. So there's that. But I'm not going to have collision right now because I don't have any apples falling. So I'm just going to say default. And we'll go back into Neil's blueprint. And there are a couple ways you can add your object or your weapon or your asset. One way is to go and make sure that you have your object selected, whatever it is, and then you go add component, and you want to say static mesh basket. In my case, it's basket. So it drops it here, right? Now you'll see it's not actually following like Neil's hand or anything like that. And that's because you actually have to set up a socket on Neil. And I'll explain that in just a second. So I'm going to back out, go into Mesh, open up Neil's skeleton. So in here, another really cool thing about Unreal is you can add sockets to bones. So like, let's say you want to have that, I want to have that basket in Neil's left hand, right? So if I go and play the, where's the idle animation? He's holding his hand out as if he's holding something. He's holding the basket. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pause this animation real quick and go to the very first frame and look, well, click his hand. right? And it clicks his bone through the hand. That's his left hand, and it's highlighting it here. I want to add a socket to that, so I'm going to right-click and say Add Socket. And what that did, and I'm going to turn down this camera speed real quick so I fly a little slower, and that added this like little diamond shape. I don't know if you can see it, but it added it also down here in the hierarchy. It added this like diamond-shaped, tool thing there that you can move, rotate, however you want to. I'm going to move it more towards the center of his hand. So I'm going to take the move tool, move it out. He's holding like a little gem, tiny little gem in his hand. Move it out to about there, and we'll back it up, and we'll say that's okay for now. I'm not going to rotate it at all because when you add the socket, it's actually using the rotation of your bone. One of the things that I did when I was using sockets before was I just rotated the socket exactly, the rotation that I wanted the object to be. And I found that in a lot of cases that was bad because when a socket works, it's always keeping the z-axis up. So if you're rotating that and rotating it separate from the hand, maybe you want another object to go in that hand that's a little differently oriented than another object, right? So switching between them, it gets really wonky and trying to figure out what rotation you want all the assets to be at one time. It's just a lot. So just kind of leaving that socket rotation alone is usually what is, I think, the best, what you should do. So I'm going to save, and since I have that set, I'm going to go back into Neil's blueprint. And what you should be able to do, and I could not get it to work for some reason, I don't know why, but you should be able to type in that socket's name in the parent socket and to get it to work. I've tried dragging it into the mesh and trying to rename it, but it won't let me type. It should, I don't know why it isn't. But while I'm on the topic, let's rename this socket what it should be. So I'm going to go click the socket name. I'm going to go and rename it socket, socket underscore left hand, I guess. Sure. Socket L hand. All right, and I'm actually gonna Control C that name because I don't feel like typing it out again because I'm lazy. So we're gonna go back into his blueprint, and because I can't for the life of me figure out why that isn't working, another easy way to do it is, yes, a tiny bit, I mean a tiny bit of scripting. All right, just one node that you have to drag out. All right, just one teeny tiny node. And that node is going to be the attach to component node. So you just right click, type in attach, whoops, not attack to component, but attach to component. I'm going to click that. And this is in the construction script. Whatever you put in here, it will show up in your viewport, in your character blueprint, and in the scene out in Unreal. So I'm going to go hook these nodes up. And what do we want the target to be? We want it to be the basket. I'm going to click that basket layer here, drag that node, and actually, is it the parent? Oh yeah, so instead of just right-clicking, we have to actually drag out the basket first. So forget what I just said earlier. You have to take the basket, drag it out, and drag that out and say attach the component. So I guess it is the parent. All right. Click and drag it out, and then you want the target to actually be the mesh. Am I doing this wrong? Attach the component. Okay. Yeah, you have to drag the mesh out first. See, I told you, I'm not a programmer, ladies and gentlemen. So, I told you. But it's still being weird. Let me see. Right click. I'm checking my notes really quick. The basket as target and mesh as parent. Yeah, so basket as target. Okay, so there are two.
Basket, so it's the self that it's referencing.
Okay, yeah, okay, there we go. Yeah, thanks. Yeah. So there were two different attached to components that I was missing. There were two different ones. I had it right, kind of. I just clicked the wrong one. Might be everybody. But what I did was I dragged it out from basket, and I said attach, and it was the second one down here. And it's the target is scene component. Make sure that's what it says. All right, so we got basket, mesh, and then we got to name the socket name, which is I just pasted what I copied from the skeleton. Socket L hand. And you can change these. I recommend you not, because it's reading the location, rotation, and scale of the actual socket, which we didn't change originally. We're going to keep that, and we're going to compile, and boom. And now you're like, whoa, why is it up there? You can actually move this. So I'm going to move this down and around. I'm going to rotate it. Right? You can move it to wherever you want, however you want. But as you notice, as you can see, it's actually moving with Neil as it's supposed to. I'm going to change grid snap off so that I can like slide this down, push this out. And it doesn't have a texture on it right now. I don't feel like applying a texture on the basket, honestly, right now. Don't need it, because you could just kind of see what's happening here. I'm going to compile, and now when I play, whoops, the basket is now following Neil and is in his hand. Jump, and he's running around. So that, and of course you can attach the socket to the back of your character for if you want to, sword on the back or shield on the back. You can attach a socket anywhere to any bone. But in this case, I chose the hand for the basket. So yeah, that's how you attach objects to your characters. And I honestly think that was it, unless you guys wanted to quickly see how I set up like the facial animation stuff, because that's also a lot easier than you think. I won't actually make a whole bunch of them. I'll just show you exactly what I did. Would you guys be up to that?
Yeah.
Cool. All right. So really quick, because a lot of people were wondering how I did it a while ago when I started. I'm going to load up my Max file so you can kind of see exactly how it works. I'm going to go and open. I'm not going to save. I'm going into we'll do idle. We'll open up my idle. So here is Neil, and the actual morphs are attached to his head object. So his head is separate from the rest of his body, just so that I can apply these morphs. What a morph target is, and I've been saying it all day, what a morph target is, it's basically a whole separate object that isn't your character's actual head, right? In Max, what you do to set this up is morpher is the actual modifier is the morpher modifier. You can drop down and type in morpher, and there it is. But what it does is it's reading from other meshes, and it's basically telling the actual mesh to change into the meshes that you put in these little boxes here. So I'm going to unhide my morphs here so you can see each one separately. All right? And I'm going to move them out. So we have all the different ones set here, and I know some of you guys have probably seen something like this before. Kind of set up in something where you're looking and you see all these different heads. But this is his eyes closed. His left eye is up, raised. His right eye is raised. He's a little. This one, his cheeks are raised, and that one he's a little mad, right? So what I'm telling the morpher modifier to do is I apply it. And then I say, I click on an empty thing, and then I go down here and say pick object from scene, and I just pick the head, and then it makes, one of these things that I can just change whenever. And what you have to keep in mind is every of these morph targets is the same number of vertices as the main object, right? So there's no deleted vertices or anything. If I come and delete one of these vertices, it won't work anymore. So you have to make sure that any morph target you make matches the same number of polygons, vertices, edges as your main object here. All right. So you can obviously make these in any program you like, but I have it set up in ZBrush. So I basically take Neil's main head, and then I go into ZBrush, and then I make multiple layers in ZBrush to kind of toggle between the different faces. So I'm going to let my computer kind of freak out for a second. And give it a minute. Still working. Oh no. Is it still working? Yeah, it is. Okay. That was weird, but we got it. So here's his main head, right? And over, if you don't know ZBrush, then, you know, kind of tune this part out. But all I'm doing is I'm just taking his main head and I'm just moving, you know, kind of the vertices around, or moving his face around. Like I'm just bumping, you know, this, pulling, if it will let me. Maybe it won't. Let me go into this. So the way I'm setting this up is this is the base subtool in ZBrush, right? This is his main head. And then he's got layers here, and all these layers are his morphs. So you got angry, you got brow raise, and then you can you know, put them on top of each other, and then you get really weird results if you start doing that. But one after another, you do that, and then you can add another one. So I'm going to add a new layer, and then I'm going to switch the color. And don't know why he's all black like that. Change into white, fill object. Oh, that's why. Okay, fill object. There we go. So you can actually change. So I'm gonna like pull his cheek up here into like a weird snarl, right? So like, let's say I wanted that to be a morph target, right? So I'm going to stop recording that, and then I'm gonna just, you know, shift, right? So I can see that working there. I'm going to go, and let's say I want to make that one. So I'm going to take this, make sure that this is all the way up. I'm going to say bake. And now this is one object, right? So that is the morph. Like that is a morph. And then I export that from ZBrush, and then I import that into Max as another head, right? That I just throw in there. And then you just go back, you know, into your morpher target, or your morpher modifier, and then just click your box of empty, pick object from scene, and then select your head, right? And then that's another morph that you can animate down here in your timeline. And that's all it is. So if you wanted to do that in Max, you can do that in Max. Just, you know, copy the head, pull it off to the side, take vertices, and just, you know, click a vertice, move it around. You know, do your thing in Max if you're, you know, good or fast at using Max, or Maya or something. I know Maya has its own way on doing morphs. It's not the same. But in Max, this is what you do. And I find it's really easy to work with. And, you know, the only thing that you have to keep in mind is that, you know, vertices and the edges in the same number of polygons. And it will work. And then there's one thing you always have to do before you try to export. And it's really weird and it's stupid, and me and a couple friends are trying to figure it out for the longest time, but you have to take your skin modifier, which is, you know, for your bones, right? You have to make sure, first of all, that your morpher target or morpher modifier is under your skin. But before you export, you have to right click, you have to cut the skin, and then you have to repaste it. We don't know why, but that's the only way that the morphs will work in Unreal if you try to bring it in. And then it works. It's weird. It's stupid. That's the only way it works. Once you do that, your morph should work. It should be imported as long as you have that morph checkbox checked when you go to import it into Unreal. And yeah, that's just like that. That's pretty much what you do for making facial animation. So you can have, you know, a mouth, make you smile, frown, have a tongue, stick it out, frown with your eyebrows. You can do so many different things with that. A lot of, you know, game characters have that for just fixing up bones. Like a lot of games would have their faces rigged with bones, but they use morph targets to kind of fix the deformations that those bones make, right? And a lot of simpler games just kind of use the method that I just did here, where you're just taking the actual morph targets and just moving their vertices. So that's how you do morph targets and facial animation in a nutshell. So yeah, that's everything, honestly. Bringing characters from your 3D software straight into Unreal, and it seems like a lot if I'm just, you know, just going through it. explaining to you guys how to do it. It sounds, you know, going through this, it was like what, an hour and 50 minutes or whatever. But honestly, if you get into the practice of doing this, it's not that hard and it's not that much. And a lot of people get scared with, oh, got a program and stuff. No, just use the preset that Unreal gives you, and you're set. It's just a copy and paste and replace from there. I encourage all of you, if you're in character class or if you're making your own characters, you know, for a personal project, definitely just, you know, if you have animations, bring it into Unreal, because that's what industry people are looking for. They're looking for those people who could bring their characters in and show their animations in real time. And that will definitely push your portfolio up a level. So again, I encourage you guys to do this with all your characters. So is there any questions at all, even in the chat or anything like that? I'll open it up for Q&A. No questions in the chat? Got a question in the back, yeah. Yeah, so I mean, maybe. What, as far as I know, you can go and edit some of the things in here. Like there are other settings. Like I said before, there are many settings you can change. So like this says capsule. I don't know if I've actually gotten it to work with changing the actual shapes of these. I think you can actually make a new like a new type of, where's it, add shape, add box. Yeah, like you can add, I just added a box to this, what is it, the arm. And so you can you know, shape, you can resize this and stuff to get it to fit better for whatever mesh you have. But as far as like actually making it match your character entirely, I'm pretty sure there should be a way. I haven't looked into it much because really everything that I've done with it is just capsules, and capsules usually work. Again, you got to kind of, you know, work with it. You have to, you know, test it, but usually capsules, it works most of the time. So. Mm-hmm.
It's a lot better.
Yeah. So something like this is a lot easier on your computer as far as processing power and everything. So Unreal's smart, but it can be slow sometimes, as you know. So wherever you can cut corners, do it. That's definitely one of the biggest things in game development. You could cut corners without it being, you know, too weird looking, do it. Which is why I say, you know, when I was doing this, you definitely want to take the time to make sure these fit as good as you can get it. I didn't take as much time to do it today, but usually you have to make sure you get it, and it will look perfect. Any other questions? Yeah.
Make that.
There might be, there might actually be a somewhere in here, maybe. I didn't look into it much, but I mean somewhere probably. But again, they're kind of quick adjustments. Trying to get it to work right is, you know, pretty simple. But there aren't a lot of them anyway. So you could have like wildly crazy characters, you know, with like a whole bunch of bones and stuff, where it might get complicated. Then I'd look into it. But so far I haven't had to kind of go deep into it, so I'm not 100% sure of that one. Good questions though that I haven't looked into, so I'll definitely look those up in a little bit. Any other ones? Going once? Going twice? So!
Wait, what?
Oh man! All right. Yeah, thank you, thank you. So yeah, you can contact me. I got my email, kentonreynolds44@gmail. I got my website if you want to look at some of my stuff. I haven't updated it in a second, but it's just kentonreynolds.net or kentonreynolds.com. Feel free to ask me questions, or if you just want to talk and chat about stuff, just hit me up, and I'll be happy to answer back and talk with you about stuff. So yeah, cool.
Thank you guys for coming. We really appreciate it. We got a sign-in sheet. Show up for this, and if you also have any recommendations or any feedback for us, we have some sheets for that too. I think 2 weeks from now, we have another one of these. Joe's going to be giving a talk on Unity. We're going to be setting up a small game in there. And then next week, we're going to be putting together stuff for the First Media Festival. We got carpool signs for that. We're going to be eating out afterwards. It's going to be an all-day event. Hope to see you guys there.